Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am joined here, as always, by the man who I cannot believe did not get drafted yesterday. Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, very disappointing day for me. Obviously, the bigger one's you looking like a young Nick Bosa not getting drafted.
Incredible. That was a great find on Twitter. So also, before we get into this, I like how there's a dislike on this video before we even start the podcast. That cracks me up of just people already ready to disagree with me.
Yeah. I mean, we're ready to get into it. We're ready for some controversy here.
Yeah. Well, listen, a lot of fun stuff. Everyone, make sure you hit the like button, even it out a little, or dislike, whatever. It's your life. You can do what you want. This should be a very fun episode. We're going to go through the entire draft. So we're going to talk about every team. We're just going to go in order to keep things easier. So we'll start with who picked first and go all the way down to the poor Texans. Kyle, ready to start?
Always. Let's go ahead and get into it.
Yes. All right. So we'll start off Jacksonville Jaguars. I have these little graphic things set up, although it's kind of weird where it's in the middle and our face is kind of covering half our faces exactly. But, there you go. Right. Leave it up for a second just so people can see. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence we knew was going to be the big one. And then I think really where it gets interesting was round two with their second pick, which is first round, Travis Etienne. That was wild to me.
Yeah. I didn't like that pick. I liked their draft, but individually I hated that pick. Because I've heard the excuses of, and I get it, the NFL is a 2 running back league. That's an important part of the game. But that doesn't mean pick 25 needs to be your second running back.
Right.
You literally hit the gold mine with a really good undrafted free agent running back. You didn't have to waste a draft pick on him, and then you waste a first-round pick on another running back. Not that it's a waste, because I think Etienne's going to be a good football player. He was my number 1 running back. He was your number 2. And I think he is going to be a good running back in the NFL. I just don't love the idea of getting him. This Jacksonville defense had so many holes last season. We talked about it. This was probably the worst defense in the league last year. And I think they did a good job in the later picks of addressing some defensive guys. But I thought the first round with that second pick was a really good time to get a defensive player to help out that defense that could start right away. And they didn't do it. I didn't like that pick. I like the rest of their draft, though.
Yeah, Carlos in the chat says apparently Urban Meyer really wanted Tony to fall instead of ETN, which, that's music to my ears. I'm all on board the Tony train. But, I agree. You look at the rest of the draft, I think there's a lot of good here. Tyson Campbell and Andre Sisco are 2 guys who I think, second and third round pick who could really help. And Walker Little's interesting to me. Second round pick again. I kind of like that to help their offensive line. They could use tackles. I'm with you. Getting a running back when you're literally coming off of the worst record in football last year is silly, because you got to be competitive in a hurry. I don't understand that whatsoever. But at the same time, maybe they want to just get a running game to take some pressure off of Trevor Lawrence, who, he's the future.
Yeah. I mean, so the interesting thing's going to be is how does this develop? I feel like the big thing with the Jaguars in this draft is their picks from round 2 on felt like the ultimate boomer bust picks. Like, I think Tyson Campbell can be a really good cornerback. I felt like both of those Georgia cornerbacks could be really good. I do think that they have some flaws to their game, though, that they're going to have to clean up at the pro level. I feel like Andre Sisco can be really good, but he's another guy coming off a knee injury that it's like, I don't know. Walker Whittle 2 years ago had first-round NFL tape, but he hasn't played in 2 years, so that makes it really hard to judge that with all the injuries and everything he's dealt with. Jay Tufele is another guy who, just a couple years ago looked like he had first-round tape, then had some other stuff going on with him at USC. So I feel like there's a lot of high-end talent risk-taking here, and, if 2 or 3 of these guys hits, then it looks like an awesome draft. They knock it out of the park. But then there's also concerns about some of these guys long-term and how they hold up, and, can these guys get healthy, stay healthy, and, develop their games at the pro level.
Yeah, I like this comment. Y'all having a mustache competition? Not a very good one.
No, I mean, this is not the strongest mustache, but we're going in the right direction here.
Yeah, this is the I've been busy with a draft for 3 days mustache. But about what you said about sort of a lot of these guys being high risk, high reward. Isn't that what you do when you're a bad team? You draft guys who are high risk, high reward. Some work out, some don't, and then you can get some steals that way.
Yeah, honestly, it's not a bad idea because, like I said, I think Walker Little would probably, if you go off his 2018 tape, which is, it's 2018, Walker Little could be like the number 3 or number 4 tackle in this draft. So I think that's really good value to get him where they got him. Andre Sisco's another guy. If you saw the good parts of Andre Sisco, you think this guy could be the best safety in this draft. But unfortunately, between the knee injury and the bad parts of Andre Sisco, he slips a little. Jay Tufele is another guy like that. So yeah, I mean, I do think when you're a bad team, you take a few chances. They just took a lot of chances with these guys. But, the other thing is, too, it sounds easy to say, oh, yeah, they should have just you should have just you would have obviously taken Trevor Lawrence if you're the first pick. Trevor Lawrence is in this draft class, and you have to say that's a good pick, too.
Exactly. And the reality is, if everything else fails but the Trevor Lawrence, then it's a great draft. I mean, because just quarterback position is so important. So, any final thoughts?
And then going with that too, if everything works out except for Trevor Lawrence, this could be looked at as a bad draft. So
right. Good point. All right, let's move on. Similar boat, New York Jets. It's a similar thing. They get the franchise quarterback. They're not really too concerned about, you have other stuff which you find interesting. I'm not sure if they had to trade up for Elijah Vera Tucker, to be honest. Yeah, I feel like wait around for Christian Darrisaw might have been the better move. But you know what? They wanted a guard who can sort of fit that scheme, so I guess I get it. Again, Elijah Moore is the second round, who seems, a lot of people had a first round grade on him. Multiple Michael Carters. What were your thoughts on this draft?
I like this draft. I liked what they did here. You could argue that trading up for Vera Tucker is a lot, but they also had a lot of draft picks to work with that they didn't need to make all of those picks. So it's like, okay, why don't we just move up and get a guy we like? The appeal to Vera Tucker was, I don't think he has the ceiling of some of the other offensive linemen, but it looks like he can play probably 4 positions on the offensive line. So he has that versatility to work for him, and the Jets are going to utilize that. The interesting part to this was, so Doug Kidd's a Nesson reporter for the Patriots, and I mean, for my money, I think he's the best Patriots reporter on the beat right now. He was talking about how his first thing was that despite all the reports about Patriots wanting to move up for Justin Fields, he heard Belichick wasn't in love with Justin Fields. The second thing he said was that if Vera Tucker was available at 15, he thought they would have picked Vera Tucker over Mac Jones. Which seems a little crazy, but maybe the Jets heard something about that. That could have just been smokescreen. But maybe they hear something about that, and all of a sudden they want to get their guy in Vera Tucker, who, like I said, versatile offensive lineman, can do a lot. Joe Douglas loves his offensive lineman picks. So I end up liking the pick because they have to give up a little bit for it, but I think it does make sense to go up and get the guy you like. I had them getting Najee Harris in our mock draft. They ended up waiting and getting, I think, a good player, Michael Carter, the first Michael Carter they drafted. I think he's going to be a good running back. He's got great speed, kind of fits the modern game. So I thought it was a good draft.
Yeah, I agree. And, the Elijah Vera Tucker thing, to me, he is a guard. I don't see him play. Maybe he can play tackle if you have to, but I think that he's at his best when there isn't a lot of space and he can sort of use that power. He doesn't have the biggest arms. So getting him as a guard, that just makes a lot of sense to me. And that's what they plan on using him for. So, and again, they needed to improve the offensive line. So getting an offensive lineman, I'm almost never going to hate on, especially when you're a team like that. And Elijah Moore is also another interesting guy. So, again, similar to Jaguars. As long as Zach Wilson works out, you're good.
Yeah, that's the same thing. Yeah, they got to hit on one of these quarterbacks eventually. So, hopefully it's Zach Wilson. As a Patriots fan, I hope it's not Zach Wilson. But, I mean, there's a lot to love about Zach Wilson. And I know some people didn't have him number 2 quarterback. I know a lot of people did. Some crazy people had him number 1. But, I mean, he can make every throw in the book, and he kind of has the skill set at quarterback that you look for in a lot of these guys, in that, different arm angles, off balance throws. He has the whole package. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get on to number 3 was really where the draft started. 49ers going with Trey Lance, which was, some people thought they might go there. People were unsure, but Trey Lance ends up he's really the main guy to talk about. There's a few, obviously they had a bunch of other picks, but really Trey Lance is the headliner. What were your thoughts on Trey Lance?
I mean, I was fine with this draft overall. I didn't like it. I didn't hate it. I thought it was fine. I thought they did a good job of acquiring the talent that they wanted. They got 2 running backs, which is what they do. Trey Lance is interesting. I don't know. I had him I mean, I don't mind the idea of, taking a chance on Lance, especially, worst case scenario, Garoppolo has a great year. You just keep playing Garoppolo, and you have Lance as an alternative. I had Lance as my fifth quarterback in this draft because I had concerns about, the lack of sample size, how he basically hasn't really been in a passing offense much of his career because he was a predominantly runner in high school. So I had some concerns about that. And that's kind of why I had him a little lower, because it's just like, I don't know. But at the end of the day, you look at it and why this job is so hard for a lot of general managers. These quarterbacks, you look at it statistically, there's about 8 or 9 quarterbacks drafted every draft. About 2 or 3 of them are good. So you're just hoping that the one you drafted and the one you evaluated is one of those good guys. I had Lance a little lower. I know some people had Lance a little higher. It really just kind of depends on what you like. So that's why I was just fine with it.
Yeah, I mean, I probably would have gone Mac Jones, but they're in the same tier for me. I'm not mad at it, and I think that Trey Lance could be awesome in that as well. You're right that it's the small sample size is a bit tough, and also the rest of the 49ers draft to me felt very like they're just getting their types of guys. They're getting guys that can play there. So I know that they got a tackle at some point that used to play tight end, so kind of like that athletic tackle that kind of fits their run scheme. So it's just stuff like that, which I feel like it's if some other team had this exact draft, I would be a lot lower on it than what they did because it's fitting their scheme. I meant to set this up at the start of the show. I forgot. Let's grade each draft, but we'll do it a little bit different than everyone else. Let's just do you hate it, dislike it, meh, like it, or love it?
I think I'm on the meh, maybe closer to like it, but probably just meh for me. Like I said, I don't love it. I don't hate it. But I think it was fine. I thought they did a good job. And like I said, if they felt like Lance was that guy at number 3, then you give them credit for going up and get that. I had Lance a little lower, but these quarterbacks are just really hard to judge.
Yeah, I think I'll say I like it, but that's not counting the trade. That's just counting the actual picks itself. Because I still feel like I don't know if you had to trade 3 first-rounders for this. Matthew Stafford went for 2 first-rounders.
Yeah, exactly. The one interesting pick to me, too, a little lower in the 3rd round was, because this didn't feel like a 49ers guy, was Trey Sermon. It didn't seem like he ran anything that felt close to a 49er style. They usually prioritize speed at running back. He's not speed at all. He's the quite opposite of speed. I like his game. I like what he did at Ohio State last year and previously at Oklahoma. But I'm interested to see how they use him because he's not a typical 49ers running back to me.
Yeah, good stuff. It should be fun to watch. Let's move on to number 4, the Atlanta Falcons. Their first-round pick, I think a lot of us figured was going to go this way, but there was still some up in the air, some decision they could make. But, Kyle Pitts being the big headliner here. So your guy, Richie Grant, in the 2nd. Jalen Mayfield, who I think some people thought would go earlier, falls to the 3rd. So some talent here for the Atlanta Falcons, specifically with potential generational talent with the first player that wasn't a quarterback to go.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and say love it. I love this draft. I mean, it's not my number 1 draft, but I really love what they did. They didn't reinvent the wheel. They just took the best player I had available. He was number 1 on my big board. He looks like he can be a generational talent, Travis Kelce type of tight end, and we've seen what Travis Kelce has been able to do in Kansas City. They had a quarterback, so they didn't have to waste time with getting another quarterback. And they got a guy who I think is really good. I really like Richie Grant. He does really well in run coverage. He's also flash potential in pass coverage, and he's also just really good in having a nose for the football and making plays and creating turnovers, which is, back with my Antoine Winfield thing last year, this is something I really love in safeties, a guy who just has the nose for the ball, and he clearly has that. And the one question for him was the speed, which is not just lackluster, it's bad speed for that position. But I think he makes up for a lot of it by taking really good angles to the football, and that's something he's done his whole career in playing multiple different safety positions at UCF. So I'm a big fan of Grant, and I really like those 2 first 2 picks, and I think Mayfield's a good pick too.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure I'm going to go love it, but I like it. I think that this is good. I think that I'm just lower on Grant than you are. Not to say that I think he's bad. I'm just not quite wild about that pick. But Kyle Pitts is awesome. And again, they're kind of in a weird spot where they were the 4th worst team, but I don't feel like they're the 4th worst talent. And I actually think Atlanta could be a sleeper team next year, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting team. The tough part is obviously, getting through Tampa Bay. But, I mean, I think that this team can make a lot of noise. And it was a team, one of the things you look for teams to turn around. I believe they were terrible last year in one-score games, and that's something that's usually a good predicator on teams who are going to get better is that, those teams tend to balance out one-score games, and that's something they can get better at. So maybe this team turns it around next year. We've kind of been waiting on it. I think it could be an interesting team.
Yeah, and half of those one-score games, they were up like 20 points at some point.
Yeah, no kidding. So I think they look better with the new regime. I really like Arthur Smith. I think everybody likes Arthur Smith, so that's not a hot take. And it'll be interesting to see him as a head coach. Yeah, I'm excited for the Falcons. I think it could be a fun season next year.
Yeah, probably someone who doesn't like Arthur Smith.
I don't know. Like, how do you hate Arthur Smith and what he's done?
I'm sure there's someone out there.
I don't know. I guess if someone doesn't like Arthur Smith, speak up now.
Okay, all the Arthur Smith haters can come out of the woodwork. Speaking of haters, I have a feeling you are going to be a hater of this selection. I'm not a huge fan myself. I'll let you take the floor for the Cincinnati Bengals pick.
Yeah, I put this under dislike just because I like some of their later picks, including but I mean, I'll just get into the first two. I mean, this is ridiculous, right? I mean, I get that they got Carmen in the second round, and that could be a good tackle, but you had a chance to get a generational tackle. I mean, I hate everything about this. I don't like the idea of drafting a wide receiver at 5 and wasting that pick. I tweeted this out as soon as it happened, and I think we're right on this. I generally don't say I'm smarter than NFL teams, and I'm definitely not. But I definitely think we're ahead of the curve on this. Wide receiver is slowly turning into a running back-like position where every year we hear it's a deep receiving class. It's a deep receiving class. Every year now is a deep receiving class because there is 1,000 kids playing wide receiver now at the high school, college, and amateur, youth levels, because that's the way the game's going. Everyone's running a spread offense. So every team has 3 or 4 or 5 really good receivers eventually making their way to the NFL. This is another huge receiving class. And it's just like, I really like Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase was my number 1 wide receiver, but would you be shocked if Terrace Marshall's the best receiver in this class? Would you be shocked if Kadarius Toney is the best receiving receiver in this class? Would you be shocked if Elijah Moore is the best receiver in this class? No, no, and no. I think all those guys have really high upside and are really talented wide receivers. I would be really shocked if Penei Sewell is not one of the 2 best tackles in this class. I just think that everything he has, and like I said, I said it during our mock draft. I'm sure Joe Burrow really likes the idea of playing with Chase again. I also am sure he probably really likes the idea of not tearing his ACL again, which having a left tackle like Penei Sewell will help. I know they addressed their offensive line in free agency. I still don't like the pick. I would have taken Sewell and just worried about everything else later. I didn't think wide receiver was that big of a problem for them.
Yeah, I think it's good stuff by you. I think Ryan Leaf, I believe, said it very well when he said, would you rather have Joe Burrow throwing to T. Higgins, or would you rather have Ryan Finley throwing to Jamar Chase? Because that's what happens if you don't adjust the offensive line, is your quarterback gets hurt. And I'm totally with you. I think Sewell was right there. And it's like, if you really think Jamar Chase is going to be this Calvin Johnson type guy, then I get it. But I just don't know how anyone could say that before the draft.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to evaluate wide receivers. And like I said, I thought there was so many guys in this draft that this was a pretty deep tackle class too, I'll admit. But it still felt like Penei Sewell was head and shoulders above everybody else in the tackle class, And like I said, I think that there are so many wide receivers that there was guys later in the draft, like the 3 I mentioned that win the second round, a guy like Seth Williams later in the draft that I thought could be pretty good. It was just like there's guys in this draft that I'm okay with it, and running with those guys, Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, I thought would be fine. Whereas, Chase could be a great wide receiver, but I'm not sure if he's going to be the same value as Penei Sewell at left tackle.
Yeah, and also getting a little bit down, like getting Jackson Carman in the second round, who appears to be just a guard. So again, I'm not. Zach Taylor straight up said like he's going to compete for a starting spot to be a guard. So I don't know exactly how confident that can make you feel. I guess going back to Chase, like it seems like he'll be good for Cincinnati. Like everyone likes Jamar Chase as a prospect. I'm probably the lowest I've seen anybody, and I have him as my wide receiver 3. So like pretty much everyone is a huge fan of Jamar Chase. It's more so just yeah, like you said, positional value is it's important, and I don't know if I agree with it. I'll say I hate it.
Yeah. Yeah, I have it as dislike. The only reason I have it as dislike is because I like Joseph Asai and think he has some upside. And I know he's your guy. Tyler Shelvin could be interesting as well. I
Yeah.
think, yeah. So I think that's
Mhm.
a couple interesting picks there that I think kind of saved it a little bit from being like my least favorite draft. And the other thing is too is kickers in the fifth round. Really, we're still doing this. Like
Uh-huh.
I hated my team doing this last year, and we're still doing this. I just don't get it. Evan McPherson could be a stud, but the value of kickers in the fifth round, I'm just like, I don't know.
Well, I've always stated like if a fifth round pick meant that your kicker is going to be like a fantastic kicker, then fine, cool. But the reality is, kickers tend to almost never work out when you draft them. It's such a wild card, such a crapshoot that just get one undrafted.
So, but yeah,
Mhm.
so we can stop hating on the Bengals so much.
Yeah, let's start hating on the Dolphins instead for really doing the exact same thing. And now, one thing about Miami is I do feel like Jalen Waddle is the better. Is it just fits with Miami better? They also got Jalen Phillips, who I think that's a great pick at number 18. Javon Holland, a lot of people like Liam Eichenberg, another guy who I haven't spent a ton of film on, but people find him interesting. So they did address the offensive line just a little bit later than maybe they should have. So to me, I'm going to give this a. I'm actually going to give this a like it just because of how big of a fan I am with Jalen Phillips.
Yeah, I ended up giving it a meh.
Hmm.
Basically, the same conversation. I get, the appeal to Waddle was that I think he's if you look at the trend of where football is going, Waddle can kind of be that guy. And he's another one where it's like if he's the best receiver in this draft 5 years from now, I'm not shocked by any means because he has everything that you
Hmm.
look for in a wide receiver nowadays. But once again, it's just taking him at 6. I don't know about taking him at 6. You and I both had Jalen Phillips as our number one edge rusher, and I think we both talked about it. I kind of expect him to fall to that 18 to 25 range, and he did because, the injury history is, even as I rated him as the number one edge rusher, I was concerned about the injury history because he's not too far
Hmm.
removed from an injury that said he can't play football anymore. So that's not something you love to hear, but I think he's a complete package as far as an edge rusher. So I like the pick. I like Liam Eichenberg too. I like Hunter Long, even though, him and Gesicki will be interesting in how they use those two tight end sets. Javon
Right.
Holland's a guy who I think can be an interesting safety to like kind of fill in. He's not great against the run at all, and he's not great coming up as a tackler, but I think he can cover pretty well. So it's kind of interesting to see how he's deployed. So I just went mad just because I don't love the pick at 6, but I understand it. I understand it a little more than the Bengals, just because I don't think they had the same issue. I mean, I think they had an offensive line issue, but it's not as disastrous as Cincinnati was last year.
I don't know about that actually. I mean, I think the Pro Football Focus. I think Cincinnati's was worse, but not by a lot. Like, I think Cincinnati's was 31st and Miami's was 30th, and that's also with Jonah Williams being hurt a little. So Cincinnati at least they can say like, well, we have a good left tackle, but it just can't stay healthy. Miami, if Sewell can play right tackle. He can play left or right, so he could play right tackle for the left-handed quarterback. And I just think that this is a. I think that I don't know what Miami's doing with their offensive line, quite frankly. Their offensive line, not great, and they get rid of Eric Flowers. So I get it. He's not a superstar, but you're getting another guy out of the room, and you're not really addressing it until the second round, which, you finally make it could have been a little bit better, but it's to me, it just feels like, what are you doing here? Or do you give Tua some time?
Yeah, and they also let Ted Karras go, who I don't think is the worst center in the world. I don't know if he's
Mhm.
starting caliber, but it's another same thing where it's, another guy leaving the room. I think they hope Austin Jackson works out, and maybe he gets better this year because I think he had some issues last year. But, if Austin Jackson works out and gets a little bit better, then you probably justify this. But that's also taking a chance that Austin Jackson doesn't get better.
Yeah, and for Miami, I mean, let's just be honest. They screwed up last year's draft. Noah Igbenogany, Austin Jackson, and Tua all look like if they could do it all over again, they get 3 different players. So they have to hope that Jalen Waddle turns into the guy they want him to be. They have to hope that these things work out, because if they, yes, they did a great job of acquiring all these draft capital, but as the Raiders showed you, you have to also draft the right players.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's got to work out for them. I mean, at the end of the day, I think these draft classes are going to be judged like 5 years from now. I still hold out hope for Tua, but yeah, if they did it over again, they're going to take Herbert. So we'll see on them. I mean, I still have it as mad because I like some of the other picks, but I don't know. It's an interesting draft.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And to be fair, I thought it was going to end up being worse than what they actually got. So I was actually pleasantly surprised, but I was also expecting the worst. This is the Detroit Lions. I mean, this is the first round, just a complete blessing where Penei Sewell happens to just fall into their lap. I'm sure they didn't expect that to happen. Kyle, what are your thoughts on the Lions draft?
I think this was my favorite draft. Honestly,
Okay.
I had this as a love. I think Penei Sewell going 7 is a steal. He was number 2 on my big board. I think he's a generational tackle talent, as I said, but the last 2 teams, and they passed on him, and the Lions took advantage. And this just, from everything we heard about Dan Campbell in the offseason after he got hired, now you can question the hire all you want, which is fair. Everything he said in the offseason about what he wanted this team to be, it seems like they drafted. And they're working on establishing an identity because they get a guy in Sewell who I love. They get a guy in Levi Onwuzurike who was, I think, both of our number 1 defensive tackle, although I have to retroactively call Christian Barmore my number 1 defensive tackle because he's on my team. But, I mean, he was my number 1 defensive tackle and your number 1 defensive tackle, and we both thought he was massively underrated. They got him at 41. I thought that was a great pick. I like McNeil too, so it'll be interesting to see those two together. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think he has some flaws to his game, but he's also, just going off of the identity of his team, by far, I think he's the best blocking wide receiver in this draft. Now, how much should you prioritize blocking out of wide receiver? That's fair. But looking at the identity of this team and what they're trying to build, I think DeAndre Swift could end up being like a first-round fantasy pick this year because of the way they're building this team and how they want to establish this identity.
Yeah, I like this. The can't pronounce the name draft. Yeah, a lot of wild names with the Detroit Lions. But I think I agree with you. I love a lot of what they did. Onwuzurike, huge fan of, and Sewell. I have nothing else to add. You have anything else you want to say?
No, I think we just covered it. I thought it was, like I said, one of my favorite drafts. I thought it was interesting to see. I think it's really good. Yeah.
All right. Carolina Panthers. This is an interesting one. So, again, for whatever reason, this is a take you're not allowed to have in football circles. I think that they should have gone quarterback. I'm a little bit concerned about the Sam Darnold, letting him literally be the only guy in the room. Didn't go quarterback at all. That being said, I liked a lot of what they did. J.C. Horn should fit that system well. He won't be able to play press coverage in that system. At least I shouldn't say he won't be able to. Last year, they didn't have their corners play press hardly at all. So maybe they'll change that with Horn. But they like to play a lot of zone, which I think works for Horn because he's not the most explosive. And then a guy like Tommy Tremble, who can be a great fullback, you pair him with Christian McCaffrey. That's just exciting. I think Brady Christensen's interesting. I like Terrence Marshall a lot. I think that's a great fit, again, for that team, for a lot of the crossing stuff over the middle. Shee Smith is kind of a steal at round 6. So a lot to like about this. One thing to dislike for me.
Yeah, I have it as a like it. It's borderline love it just because, like you said, I think rolling the dice it's basically what Sam Darnold and PJ Walker this year. That's basically it, right? They didn't bring anybody else in, so.
Right. Kenneth Lee says no love for XFL MVP PJ. Of course, XFL MVP. Never mind. What am I talking about? They have an XFL MVP.
Yeah, but the reason I like it, though, and borderline love it, but that knocks it down a little bit, is because they got my favorite cornerback in this draft, and they got the guy who I have as my number 4 wide receiver in this draft, in Terrace Marshall, who I guess fell because of some knee injury that he had basically since high school, and everyone's worried about it, so we'll see. But I still love a lot of his game, and his game, the last time he worked with Joe Brady, he had 13 touchdowns. So I think he's a really good wide receiver. Brady Christensen's an interesting offensive tackle. I don't love Chuba Hubbard, but, he's a guy with a large sample size of being a productive running back as a backup potentially. So that'll be interesting. And then, like you said, I thought there was just good value across the board here that I thought a lot of it makes sense. And I think the only reason I'm higher on it than you is because I like J.C. Horn a lot more than you.
Yeah, so I'll still say like it. I mean, again, the Tommy Tremble pick is just so exciting to me. I don't know exactly how he's going to be used, but imagine, you have a Kyle Juszczyk type player with Christian McCaffrey, where what do? You have them both in the game. They can both, be in the backfield. Now they're both out wide. It's so exciting, especially with with the good offensive minds that they have in Carolina, it should be fun.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see. Like you said, I think Joe Brady is going to have some fun with this offense, and I think the reason why I like it is I think Carolina got better, so I think that's going to be fun to see the next season.
Yes, one thing I have to say: if this doesn't work out, can we stop the Sam Darnold has never had help thing?
Yes. I mean, I've been ready to say that, but it's okay.
Yeah, I'm sure someone will still. Let's talk about Denver. This is, I feel like the Panthers situation, but even to a higher degree, at least for the Panthers, like there's hope that Sam Darnold doesn't work out, but they do basically the exact same thing. Patrick Surtain, so corner. I feel like I've had concerns about his speed. I'm sure he'll be fine in the Vic Fangio system because again, it's a zone style system, so I'm sure he'll be fine there. But I guess my concern is, well, what happens next year when Vic Fangio gets fired because you have no quarterback, and now who knows what system you're going to play? So you might have a corner who's fit for a zone that's not, that might not be the case next year. They didn't need corner. They didn't need halfback really with Javonte Williams round 2. I don't know if this team. I like Seth Williams. I like Jamar Johnson, but those are two positions that weren't needs. So while I do like those values, I don't really love. It's just not a position of need. I don't know how much better this team got.
Yeah, I had this as a dislike. It's borderline mad because, like you said, I like Williams and I like Johnson. I really like Jamar Johnson. I thought 164 was quite a steal. And I don't mind Baron Browning either. I think he has some talent too, so that'll be interesting. But some of these picks, it just didn't make sense to me. I didn't think corner was their – I thought they needed a corner. I didn't think there was their number one need overall. That's why I didn't understand the Surtain pick, especially when Justin Fields is there and you didn't have to move up for him. I thought that would have been a surefire pick, honestly, if he was there. And that if you didn't love Justin Fields, fine, but it's just surprising to me that they wouldn't at least take the chance on something rather than rolling it back with Drew Lock again next year and Teddy Bridgewater. And then, they had this guy for this Wisconsin Whitewater guy who basically, they drafted him and they're showing him like lifting wood. So I don't know how to evaluate that pick. So I don't know. It's just, I think there's some upside plays here, but I just overall have it as a dislike.
Yeah, I have it as a hate. I mean, how do you not at least get a draft? Like the Saints drafted quarterback in the 4th round. Like, how do you not at least get one of those mid-round quarterbacks if you really don't want to go too high? Maybe they trust Drew Lock. I just don't know. I think that this is kind of a weird draft, and I just don't agree with it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this team. But yeah, overall, was not a fan of this draft. I didn't hate some of the value picks, but like I said, I just think there was players that probably fit what they needed a little bit more.
And here's the last thing I'll say about this. What do you value in a quarterback that you don't want to draft Mac Jones or Justin Fields? Because don't they kind of them together get basically everything you value in a quarterback?
Yeah, I don't understand it. And I mean, look, I know Drew Lock played with the shoulder injury last year, and you can say, let's put it this way. I guess I'll rephrase everything I said about the Broncos. You have to beat the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers now, basically, because Herbert's coming. You have to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Do you think these draft picks help you beat the Chiefs with Drew Lock at quarterback or Teddy Bridgewater? I don't think it does.
Yeah, and the Raiders.
Yeah, the Raiders too. We'll get to them in a second.
Okay. Let's move on to the Philadelphia Eagles now. This was an interesting one. So I understand why the Eagles did what they did, trading up to get Devonta Smith. The reality is there was the 2 corners and then the 3 receivers. They wanted one of those. 4 of them were gone. So they trade up to get Devonta Smith. I get it. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but that's what they did. However, I do like Landon Dickerson a lot, and I think that's really good value at 2. I also like Kenneth Gainwell, who they got a little bit later, so I think he could be interesting. And they didn't need a receiver. This is even in my mock draft when I say don't draft a receiver. With the 12th pick, I ended up drafting a receiver with them. On it was like what I would do just because like they desperately need a receiver. So to me, this is going to be a math because I don't love drafting a receiver, and I'm also a little lower on Devonta Smith. But I also understand exactly what they did. And again, this team is closer today than they were last week.
Yeah, I'm kind of I was on the fence. I'm going to end up giving it a like, even though, I had my whole receiver spiel. But at the same time, like, this team needed some talent, and it needed to prove that, it needs to give Hurts every opportunity to succeed. And while there's a couple guys I liked in the draft probably that they could have taken, I think Smith helps Jalen Hurts more than a lot of other players would. You could have said they could have taken Rashawn Slater, but I just think that they got good football players. I think Milton Williams is a guy who could be pretty good. I think Landon Nickerson, like you said, is a guy who could be very good and is a good pick at 37. And I even think guys all the way down at like Patrick Johnson. I thought Patrick Johnson was kind of underrated in round 7. I thought there was good value in this draft. I didn't love the wide receiver pick, like you said, but I just thought overall it was pretty good value and helping Jalen Hurts out.
Yeah, and basically the whole reason, like almost the big part of like what's predicated on me saying don't draft a wide receiver in the first half of the draft is just because they're hard to evaluate. So even though you want to sit here and say like, oh, if we didn't get him, we'd be stuck with Kadarius Toney. Like, I don't see a clear world where like Devonta Smith is definitely going to be better than Kadarius Toney, just because wide receivers are notoriously very difficult to evaluate.
Yeah. We had our whole wide receiver spiel. I think it makes sense, but it's like, we'll see what happens. Some of these guys could be electric and it changes everything, but they're giving Hurts an opportunity to succeed. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens because they're another team who could have been a sneaky quarterback team if the right opportunity came up.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, definitely. All right, let's move on. Let's go to the team of the hour. This is what everyone wants to talk about. Again, another one of those teams that it's universally agreed upon, apparently, that I guess here's what I'll say. Yes, Justin Fields isn't this can't miss prospect, but the way I made a video on it, and kind of the way I described it was like desperate times cause for desperate measures. You need a quarterback, go up and get a quarterback. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. At least you can, when you lose your job, you can say, you know what, I gave it a shot.
Yep. Look, I said this a little bit earlier, but statistically, maybe 2 or 3 of these guys are going to be pretty good. I think there's a chance that I look at all 5 of these guys, and there's things I like about these guys where I was like, I could see a scenario where all 5 of these first-round quarterbacks are good, but I know the realistic aspect of it is probably 3 of them are going to be good, or 3 quarterbacks through the whole draft are going to be good. So it's going to be tough to see that going forward, and, this draft and, as you said, the career of a lot of these, the coach and the general manager for the Bears is going to be predicated on if Justin Fields works out. The only thing that's interesting to me, so I tweeted this out from our account page, and I think it's interesting to look at. I'll just read it here. In 4 years, the Chicago Bears have used 2 top 11 picks on quarterbacks, traded a first, 2 thirds, 3 fourths, including the Foles trade, and a 5th-round pick, all on QBs. Not to mention to spend about $18 million against the cap on Nick Foles and Andy Dalton. So they've given themselves every opportunity for this position to work out. Does it finally hit is going to be the question. It's going to be interesting to see. I have it as a meh overall. I know a lot of people love this draft and love taking the chance, but we'll see what happens with the Bears going forward. And, it's all going to come down to is Fields good.
Interesting. So yeah, one thing that I love the Tevin Jenkins pick as well. Yeah. I had a 1st-round grade on him, so getting him, maybe I had a second, but it was right around there. So getting him, he was the last really good tackle I think left on the board. They also get Daz Newsome in the 6th, kind of that slot receiver that nobody wants, but slot receivers have a lot more value than I think some general managers realize. Matt Fields a little bit low just because there's the opportunity. Like I do, I'm lower on Fields than most. But I just feel like, if you get a franchise quarterback, that completely changes the draft. The one issue I have with this draft mainly is their cornerback room is looking like a mess right now. Like, they need a corner.
Yeah, and it would have been interesting to see how things change if those 2 corners didn't get taken so quickly. Now, you could have said, they could have just waited and see if Farley was there or Greg Newsome or something, but that probably would have been a little early for Newsome. But at the same time, like you said, there's an opportunity to take a quarterback here. You might as well try and take it and see what happens. Overall, I didn't love a lot of the later round picks. That's just the only reason why. I like Jenkins. He's a guy I thought would go in the 1st round and had 1st-round talent at right tackle. I thought that it's the same thing I had with the who did I talk about earlier? One of the teams I thought earlier too. Is this team better after this draft? I'm not entirely sure that they're better right now.
No, I'm definitely not. That's absolutely a very fair point. And part of me wonders if, maybe they're not better this year, but so people in the comments are saying, like, what are you talking about? The Bears have great corner. Is it Jalen Johnson that's the great corner? Is it Desmond Trufant that looks looking like he's going to start? Is that your great corner? Are you a big Kendall Vilder fan? These are their top corners listed on the depth chart. So I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, I mean, you can say, oh, the Bears always have a good defense, but, you also have to have the talent there to prove it. So I think that, guys like Eddie Jackson can make up for some of that, but, corners matter. Just ask the Vikings how that worked out for them.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually a pretty good comparison. And the one thing I'll say too before we stop is this situation just feels like the Deshaun Watson situation, but now it's Chicago is the team that's trading up to get the quarterback. So since that's the case, this clearly means that they're still the Bears, so it's going to blow up in their face, proving that no matter what they do, their things aren't going to work for them.
Yeah, I mean, I hope all of these quarterbacks work out, but I mean, we'll see. I mean, so I guess that's the question. Do you love, I guess, like I said, it's hard to tell which of these quarterbacks are going to be good, so it's hard to tell overall how that's going to work out. Do you love the fit for Justin Fields in Chicago?
Well, I'll tell you this. I love it more than I love Zach Wilson having to go to the Jets or Trevor Lawrence having to go to the Jaguars. Like, yeah, there's some issues there. He gets Allen Robinson, though. The offensive line, I think, was fine when healthy. It just had a ton of injuries. So I'm not crazy about Matt Nagy, but, like, they have a good defense, except for the cornerback position is a mess now. So maybe that's the issue. But, like, I guess my point is, it's not quite as dysfunctional as a lot of these other teams. And I think that for whatever reason, we're acting like this is awful. Yeah, it's not San Francisco and it's not New England. So those, obviously, Jones and Trey Lance got the best of it. But I'd probably prefer that to, you could argue Jacksonville, but I definitely prefer Chicago to the Jets.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So it'll be interesting to see, obviously, like we said with the Jets and the Jaguars, a lot of this is going to be predicated on, is Fields good? Because as I put in that tweet, they've spent a ton of capital on quarterback over the last 4 years. If this doesn't work out, then they're just setting themselves further back, I think.
Yeah, they have to go full, complete rebuild if this doesn't work out. All right, ready to move on?
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk Dallas Cowboys. So it's interesting how some teams have different mindsets. Dallas, clearly, they just draft best player available. Micah Parsons and Jabril Cox getting multiple linebackers here, or at least who they perceive to be best player available. Some interesting round day 2 picks, I feel like. The Parsons one is the most interesting one because, you look at last year, they drafted CeeDee Lamb, even though they didn't need wide receiver. The year before, they didn't have a first rounder, but the year before that was when they drafted Leighton Vander Esch, when they didn't need a linebacker because they had Sean Lee and Jalen Smith. So this is what Dallas does, and they got the best player available, but the issue is, are they really helping their team that much?
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. I think that's the tough part is, like, how much is this helping their team? So obviously they're, like you said, it could be best player available, but they also clearly can't love the future of Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith if they're going to take Jabril Cox and Micah Parsons. Now, I think if both of those picks work out, they could have a really good coverage linebacker group, which I think could be really important for, today's NFL. Because I thought, Cox might be actually the best coverage linebacker in the draft, and they got him way down in round 4. Micah Parsons, I think his tape shows that he needs to improve some of his coverage area, but he clearly has the athleticism to do it. I thought he had some Devin White qualities to him and that he can get better at that spot, but it'll be interesting to see how he develops there. I really like the draft. I like the idea that let's just get better because, despite the nationwide media belief that the Cowboys are on the cusp of always winning the division and making the playoffs and making a run, it's not like this team's on the verge of making the Super Bowl. So why not just make your football team better? And that's kind of what they did. I think that they made their team better by getting more talented players.
This is a meh for me because, again, I get it. Like, Leighton Vander Esch has the injury history. And, like, again, I'm a huge fan of Parsons' game. I really am. And he was, I think, clearly the best player available. It's just a bit odd going with what they did. But I don't know. The reality is, I think Dallas is, I've already heard it said, like, could Dallas contend for a Super Bowl? It's like, what are we doing here? Stop this. This is no, this team is not there.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. We've seen some really good linebackers out of this Dan Quinn Seattle Seahawks style defense, and they're adding 2 more to it. Could this be Dallas's version of a Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright. I mean, that's huge standards to live up to, but
Yeah.
These guys have fantastic skill sets. So we'll see. I like some of their other picks too. I think Seme Fehoko, I think I said that right. I think he's a little unpolished at receiver, but he's a big guy who can go up and get some balls, so that'll be interesting. Nashawn Wright is slow as dirt, but he's really long and has some good ball skills and, can probably play zone defense pretty good, which works out for Dan Quinn. So that'll be an interesting pick. So I like some of the later picks and some of the flyers they took. So that's why I have as a like it overall.
Yeah, and that's fair. You could talk me into like it too. And one thing about Dallas too is, the way that since they kind of always go best player available, they tend to always get a good player in the first round, which a lot of teams can't say.
Yeah, exactly. So, and they're definitely not concerned with anything regarding offseason or draft character concerns, because they always seem to end up with these kind of guys. We both really like Parsons, so this is so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I didn't realize how bad. Like, I heard there's some character concerns. I'm like, whatever. I finally read an article about what he actually is accused of. That's some little bit past character concerns, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see overall. Don't want to speculate too much on it, but yeah, It's just we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we don't need to get sued. We won't legally go any further. Let's move on to the Chargers here. Chargers with a this was a good draft. I mean, this was let's see. I'm trying to pull up the thing. Here we go. Figured it out. I'm going to go with a like it, even though, listen, I was a little bit lower on Slater than most, but I still really like Slater. I was definitely lower on Asante Samuel than most. But one of the things I said about Samuel was the reason why I'm lower on him is he kind of needs to be in a specific scheme. Guess what? He's in that scheme. So I think he could actually be a lot of fun in this coverage or in this system and that defense. I could easily see that working out. Again, sort of similar to his dad, where he kind of needs to be in that similar scheme. Don't put him on a dream team. So I like this draft a lot, and I think that this was a really good job by the Chargers. They're protecting Herbert, and they got another good corner.
Yeah, I mean, I really like these first three picks, so I have it as a like it. I mean, I really like all three of these guys. Slater falling to them was, just how the draft played out in front of them really worked out, because this was a spot we were looking at Darisaw, and I think you like Darisaw more than Slater. I like, there's a lot of guys who like Slater, and just that, he looks the most ready to play right away because he's so refined and has excellent footwork. So it'll be interesting to see. I think he can be really good. Samuel, like you said, I think he can be good. Palmer's an interesting player. So I thought there was some really good draft picks here. I just really like, this is another team where I feel like they got a lot better off of this draft because they addressed key needs and I thought got good players in those positions.
Yeah. And I mean, the reality, I agree. It's like, I guess really what it comes down to is yes, this is what you do when you have a young quarterback. You go out and you don't have the best offensive line. You fix the offensive line. Good job, Chargers. We should give them a lot of credit, because if we kill the teams that don't do this, we should give the credit to the teams that do.
Yeah. And then one player I thought was really interesting was Chris Rumph. He kind of has, this is going to be some lofty expectations for a fourth round pick, so it's kind of unfair. But Chris Rumph has a little bit of that Dwight Freeney to him, where he's a little undersized, but he has every pass rush move in the book. So maybe this works out, but we'll see what happens. Obviously, it's a lot of flyers in the fourth round. You never quite know. But I think he's a good flyer to take because I think he has a great skill set to him.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about your team, New England Patriots. They did it. The Patriots are back. They've got another quarterback who has an out of shape draft photo. New England Patriots, what are your thoughts?
I really like the draft. I liked everything about it. Borderline love it. I'm trying to stay a little bit, unbiased here. So there is a lot of talk about from basically, because I listen to a lot of Boston sports radio, Boston sports fans. I know a lot of Patriots reporters who didn't love Mac Jones, didn't love that they didn't go with the athletic quarterback or try and move up for one of those guys when they could have. I mean, I don't know. I really like Mac Jones. Mac Jones was my number 3 quarterback because I still think accuracy plays a huge thing in football today. I think athleticism is being viewed as the number 1 priority for a lot of teams, where I still think it's kind of a luxury item for a quarterback, because if you're athletic and not accurate, nobody really cares, And I think he's insanely accurate. I think his ball placement's perfect almost all the time. I think he can do a lot with the ball. I think he's great in the pocket. And I just think it's a really good pick. I like all of these picks. Christian Barmore, he was my number 2 defensive tackle. A lot of people went the number 1 defensive tackle, and I thought he'd still be a first-round pick, and they got him in the middle of the second round at 38. I thought that was a really good pick and a really opportune time to move up and get a really talented player. Ronnie Perkins is another one where it's like a really talented player. He was suspended 5 games. That's probably why he moved down a little. But when he played, he was a stud. We talked about Tevin Jenkins and how much we liked Tevin Jenkins through the mock draft process. He beat the crap out of Tevin Jenkins when Oklahoma and Oklahoma State played. He had 2 sacks in that game, completely dominated him. So I think a lot of Patriots fans are complaining about the lack of wide receiver here until Trey Nixon at the end of the draft. And it's just like, it's the same thing I kind of said earlier. With the Cowboys, I don't think the Patriots, I think a lot of people thought the Patriots just were going to move up and get Fields and draft like Terrence Marshall and their Elijah Moore in the second round and all of a sudden be Super Bowl contenders. This team is not close to a Super Bowl contention. I think they got better. They got better players at positions across the field. They address needs and also just got talented guys where they could get them. So it's not like this team's going to be on the verge of a Super Bowl anytime soon. They just got better football players.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I think that I say I love it. I think this was a great draft. And I think that I legitimately think that there's, look at this board right here. There, to me, feels like 5 guys who I'm like, oh, there's an impact for those 5 guys. They're top 5. Obviously, Mac Jones, Christian Barmore, the 2 Alabama guys, really good. I'm a big fan of both of those 2 selections. Ronnie Perkins, you said. Ramondre Stevenson, I think, is really underrated. I think Stevenson is a guy who I put him on my top 5 halfback list, and everyone was kind of saying, who is that guy? But I think that he's someone who, again, I know he doesn't look like their prototypical running back, but he cuts very well. And in that running back by committee, I think that he'll really thrive there. And, Cameron McGrone is another guy who he's someone who he just feels like he'll play like 400 snaps, but look solid in them, right? He's not going to be the guy who is going to get like everyday starter. But that's kind of what New England does, right? They try to get 53 guys on the roster who can all play instead of getting 22 who can play very well. They want to get guys who are good at stuff, and that's how they're able to get a good amount of good players. Whereas, you compare them to a Chicago. Chicago was kind of in a tough situation where they ended up with, only really 2 key guys, but those are like 2 very key guys. New England gets like 5 guys. You could argue not as good, but I think Mac Jones is going to be really good, and I think he'll shut some people up this year.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see. I think Mac Jones is going to play sooner than people think too. And like you said, McGrone's an interesting one because, those super athletic linebackers who are good against the run, those guys just kind of tend to work out sometimes. It may take a little bit because they got to improve in coverage, but I think he's going to fill a need for this team and, just add more to this linebacker depth. I love everything. I don't hate any pick in this draft. I don't dislike any pick in this draft. I think across the board, they're good picks. I really like this draft, and I'm really excited to see these guys grow and get better going forward. I just think the expectations need to be tampered because I don't think this team is on the verge of competing with Buffalo this next season. I think 2-3 years from now, I think they can be really good, but I think this is going to be a growing year for a lot of these guys.
Interesting. I think they might be a little bit closer than you do. We might disagree. Any other final thoughts on this one?
No, I think we just about covered it. I'm excited for Patriots football, so it'll be fun to see.
Yeah. And by the way, I noticed this podcast has gone on pretty long. Are you good time-wise?
Yeah, I got nothing to do. Let's keep it going.
Okay. Yeah, good. We'll go to the Arizona Cardinals now. Arizona, this was a fun draft. Why don't you go ahead and take the floor here?
I really like Zaven Collins. I have him in my number 2 linebacker. I had him, I think, on the verge of my top 10 on my big board, if I remember correctly. I really like him. And I think he's huge, but it's also like, I know he was playing the AAC, but his coverage numbers were awesome. And while the AAC obviously isn't like the best conference in the world, he was also going against some pretty good spread offenses there with UCF, SMU, all those schools. So it's, he went up against some pretty good offenses in that conference, and his coverage held up. He's really athletic for being 6'5", 270. He's got, just great motor. I love everything about him. I love the pick. Some people may think it's early at 16. I really like it. And Rondell Moore is an interesting one. He's a guy with a lot of production at Purdue, and it seemed like for a long time was really kind of the driving force of that offense that didn't really have anything else. So it's going to be interesting to see how that translates to the NFL. I think, if I remember correctly, his speed was a little shockingly slow, right?
I think he was quick. I think that if I remember, his 40 time was like really fast, but he doesn't look that fast on film.
Okay. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how it works out overall because I like those two picks and I like those two guys. So I give it as a like it. I really like what they did there.
Yeah, I'm also going to go like it here. Zaven Collins, what I like about that is, you can kind of have Simmons sort of now. He can really be that coverage, just sort of hang around by the line of scrimmage and do his thing. And now you can have Collins kind of be the guy who just stops the run. Rondell Moore is interesting. One thing I talked about with him is that he's a big boomer bust wide receiver, in my opinion, because a lot of the way he was successful in college was kind of him making moves in open space and him breaking tackles and things like that. And he's not the biggest guy. And you wonder how well is that going to translate to the NFL? How many of these moves are going to actually juke out NFL corners? They also like Marco Wilson in the third, and I believe they got him it was the fourth round, who, should be, I think it was Rich Eisen who said he should be known for more than just throwing a shoe, which I do kind of agree that there's value there. They needed a corner. So again, a lot of these kind of later picks are just like get someone in the room. I like that with Marco Wilson. So yeah, a lot of good stuff here.
Yeah, and so Tay Gowan's another one who a lot of people had a lot higher than when he went. I thought he was fine. It'll be interesting to see how he does going forward, but he's a guy who I think can be interesting at the next level. I know a lot of people rated him higher. So I think that they had good picks and addressed needs. It's going to be interesting how they work out, basically.
Yeah. All right. The next team. The why do they always do this every year? Why do they gotta do this to me? The Las Vegas Raiders do the most Las Vegas Raiders thing ever. The Alex Leatherwood in round one. Kyle, I know you love to rip on John Gruden here and there. Why don't you go ahead and take the floor?
Well, the thing is I ended up having this as a mad because it's like, look, I mean, clearly whatever the Raiders do and however they evaluate talent is just different from everybody else. They evaluate they look for certain guys and they look for certain qualities that fit their roster. So it's okay to do that. And, in a vacuum, it's like, I like Alex Leatherwood. I thought he could be a good, guard tackle combo potentially in the NFL. I think he is going to be good. Now, the value is the question, but at the same time, if he's just something that the Raiders valued, the Raiders love big guys on their offensive line. They had Rodney Hudson and Trent Brown there. So getting a big guy on the offensive line makes a lot of sense. Now, because I think in our mock draft, I had Tevin Jenkins penciled in. So I think it makes sense. So, I think I'm giving it a med just because of that, but it's like, it's okay to evaluate how you want and just get your kind of guys. The thing is that some of these picks have to start working out.
Yeah.
I think some of these, you look at some of these guys that they've drafted in the past. Arnett struggled. I'm willing to give him a couple more years because rookie corners tend to struggle. Ruggs battled some injuries, and outside the Hail Mary pass against, I think it was Miami, whatever, really didn't have a whole lot of highlight. What's that?
The Jets. How do you forget?
Right.
Yeah.
The last game of Greg Williams. So outside of that play against the Jets, he didn't have a lot of highlights. Obviously, he battled some injuries. I know a couple years everyone was ripping the Clayline Farrell pick. Some of these picks just have to start working out. It's okay to want your guys and identify your own sort of talent. They just have to work.
I think Clayline is my new favorite pronunciation of Cleveland's name there.
I'm trying my best, man. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Trust me, I do the same constantly. Yeah, I'm with you. It's like, listen, Alex Leatherwood, if they did this in a vacuum, I'm like, and for a while I kind of defended the Raiders, like, hey, this is what they want to do. But name the reach that ended up, you look back and say, oh, well, they were actually right about that. There really isn't any. And to make it worse, I know everyone liked Trayvon Merrick. I don't think he's good. He's one of those, I just don't get picks. So really, I think that out of this entire draft, I don't know enough about sort of these other mid-tier guys. Maybe they'll be good. But for the top two picks, I think they ended up with a second-round talent and a fifth-round talent, in my opinion. So I have to go with what my opinion is from what I've evaluated these guys on film and say that I hate it. But I could be wrong. I've been wrong plenty of times before.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting because I thought this next year was kind of going to be a make or break year for Jonathan Abram too. Now they have two safeties that I feel like it's going to be interesting to see how they develop and work together. You want to see these corners get a little better too. This is not the division you want to have questions in the secondary. That's
right.
The biggest thing. It's there's questions in the secondary at basically all four spots, and you're going to play Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert 4 times a year. So I think that's a little bit concerning. So, like I said, I give it a med just because we'll see with a lot of these guys. In a vacuum, I like Leatherwood, and it's okay to want your guys. They just have to start working out. And if they don't start working out, then you have to reevaluate how you're evaluating talent.
Yeah, like Leatherwood is like I have him as a second round pick. Like he's a fine player. It sucks for him that he's getting put in this situation because like it's not his fault he got drafted early. Like there's plenty to like about him. There's just I don't get how you put him over Darisaw. I just don't.
Yeah. Darius, like I said, I had Jenkins basically in our mock draft, and I kind of had him put into this spot because I actually think he's a great fit for the Raiders and what they look for in tackle talents. And while I even thought it was kind of a reach at 17, I thought he was a first-round level right tackle and thought it would work out. And they went even further down the list in getting a guy like Leatherwood, which was interesting.
Yeah, and I still feel like, again, they're like John Gruden, say what you want about him. He's still a good coach. This team's going to win like at least 7 games next year. Like they're not going to bottom out. It's just if they did such a good job accumulating draft picks and have completely squandered it. It's very, very frustrating. But any final thoughts?
I'm putting you on the spot here, but I want to know.
Okay.
Who would you put at number 2 in this division right now?
I would probably have to think about it a bit more. I think my gut is saying the Chargers have a more complete roster right now. I think the Raiders, there's a lot to like, but I just think that I'll go Chargers.
Yeah. I mean, I think I do agree too. I think they got I thought they did better at getting players that I like more in this draft than the Raiders. So it'll be interesting to see. And like I said, it's okay to want your guys. Just let's see if they start working out now.
Yeah. And also, by the way, they could have just kept Trent Brown and not had to draft tackle in the first round to begin with, but whatever. Let's talk some balls. Let's go to the Washington football team where, Jamon Davis, that was a surprise to me. That felt like a reach, but Samuel Cosmi, I'm a little bit lower on than some others, but a lot of people really like him. Certainly a second grade talent. Also, Dimey Brown in the third seems like a bit of a steal. And Cameron Cheeseman, a long snapper in the 6th round. That's the most fun pick of the draft, I think. This is, I'll give it a meh. I feel like the talent they ended up getting was about average to what I would have expected. Maybe it was kind of a different stuff. I also think Davis is going to be awesome in that team too. So this is kind of like hey, if you want to reach, do this, where you get a guy who's going to fit your scheme perfectly kind of thing. I think that's what the Raiders try to do. They just have missed a few times. So I like the pick. I just think, he's not the 16th best player on the board, but he might be the 16th most valuable to the Washington football team, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up liking the Balls draft just overall. I understood a lot of the picks. Like Davis, I felt like had overall the most variance in the draft. I feel like there was guys who were really high on him, and there was guys that are like, yeah, he's fine. And he climbed a lot of boards through the process. I think he can be really, if his athleticism is, harnessed into a really good football player, then it works out. You got a really good linebacker for the next few years. Samuel Cosmi, I think he's a little lumbering at tackle, but at the same time, there wasn't a lot of tackles who had as many reps as him and, are going to be ready to go to the next level. So he might be able to play right away. Like you said, I like De'Ami Brown at that value at 82. I think Benjamin St-Juste, I mean, he's another one he's a little slow, but when you have that sort of length, you can kind of make up for a little bit. So I think he's an interesting prospect. So I like those first 3 rounds of picks, and I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think, if 10 years from now Davis is still on this team, it looks really good. And I think it could, I see a scenario where that happens and he's a really good player for the next 10 years. So I'll go as I like it. Yeah.
For one thing, I like how, still people are surprised by the fact that we called them the Balls. I did not. Also, are they going to get a team name? I did not expect this bit to go on for over a year. Are they ever going to get an actual name?
From what I heard, they're keeping this for the next season too. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know how long it takes to come up with a name and logo, but
I mean, my favorite thing at the time was they say, "Oh, it's too late to get a new team name in. We'll have to, work." Which I don't know how it takes this long to produce a team name, and now it's going to take 2 years, which just makes it even. I feel like Dan Snyder's just trolling everyone at this point.
Can they just does Dan Snyder just keep coming up with names that are slurs instead of have to keep like throwing it out and trying to find something else?
The best part is he did all this. They had the whole stuff about everything going on in the Washington football program, and then all of a sudden it looked like, oh, is Snyder going to have to sell? No, he buys the rest of the shareholders of the team, so now he has full control of this team and still can't pick a team name. It's so funny to me how this is all working out for Washington.
Yeah, all right. Just gotta reel the show back in a little bit. This is it's a good question, a fair question. How is Jamon Davis not a reach, but Leatherwood is? And I think really what it comes down to is this is a reach, but they don't have the history of reaching the way that the Raiders do and having it not work out. So that's why the Raiders are getting more criticism than Washington is.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And, there are people out there who didn't think Davis was a reach either. So, I understand the pick, and we'll see what happens. And, yeah, I mean, I'm willing to give them a little more leniency than Las Vegas right now. Almost said Oakland. I'm willing to give them a little more leniency than Las Vegas right now because they don't have a history of botching on these picks.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to division rival. And I just have to say, those stupid Giants fans who are sitting in the front row when Kadarius Toney gets selected, all disappointed, not knowing who he is. I think I'm even more now convinced because of that reaction that Kadarius Toney is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he could. I mean, look, like I said, there's like 10 wide receivers in this draft that if they're the best wide receiver in this 5-year, I'm not really shocked. I think that he's one of those guys too, because as you made the comparison to, he has a little bit of the shades of Tyreek Hill to his game. I think he needs to shore up his hands a little bit, but overall, his shiftiness, his quickness, his top end speed, like he just looks like a pain in the ass to want to try and tackle. And there's going to be a lot that they can do. I don't love that he's going to be in Jason Garrett's offense, but I think overall, I like the idea of him, being able to move around in this offense, work in the slot, work on the outside, do different things, and that'll be interesting to see.
I think, I'll be honest, I kind of forgot that Jason Garrett was the offensive coordinator for the Giants. I think I blocked that out of my brain.
Yeah. And then, so Azeez Ojulari was a guy you didn't like, right?
I wouldn't say I didn't like. I was just a little bit lower on second round grade is fine for me. I think I had a second round grade on him.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because I think it kind of works out to where he's not going to be paired across Leonard Williams, so he's going to have a lot of one-on-one matchups, I think. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does as a rookie. So yeah, I mean, I thought this was a really good draft.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to love it. I think they got the best receiver in this draft. How's that for your hot take? Want to just move on?
Yeah, we can move on from there.
Okay, let's talk Indianapolis now. So this is an interesting one as well, where for the Colts, they get Kwity Paye, big fan of Kwity Paye, get Deo Odeyingbo. Think I nailed it. So get some edge help right off the bat, and Sam Ehlinger, who's someone who I've been saying, hey, that's an interesting guy that you might want to take a flyer on. 6th round, I'm cool with that. They got one offensive lineman, and that was in the 7th round. Maybe are they going to do like a invincible, just doing open recruits for left tackle potentially? I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do for left tackle, but as a whole, I like this draft. I'll say like it, but again, they got to figure something out at tackle.
Yeah, I think I ended up putting it as a mad just because of that. I really like Kwity Paye too. He was my number 2 edge rusher, and I thought they got good value there. So I ended up putting it as a mad because I think that is an important position that they needed to address, and they didn't. So I think that's a bit of an issue. I don't love Sean Davis either. I know that's a 5th round pick, so it's just kind of a flyer. So, I mean, so you can't criticize that too much. But yeah, I mean, I thought they should. I understand because they didn't get a lot of sacks last year getting Kwity Paye in round 1, but I thought round 2 should have been an offensive tackle, and it wasn't. And that's the only reason why I moved it down to a meh. For a team with not a lot of draft picks, I don't know why they didn't address their biggest need.
Yeah, maybe they have some. I mean, there are still a couple free agents, though, so maybe they feel like they can just get one of those guys.
Yeah. I mean, they could plug one of those guys in, but,
And if I know the Colts, they love to sign free agents. They're big on
exactly.
that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly what they do. So it'll be interesting. That's the only reason I haven't met, because they didn't have a lot of picks, and I thought they had a pretty obvious need and didn't address it. Sam Ehlinger is interesting, like you said. But yeah, I like some picks and hate some picks. That's the only reason I have it below.
Yeah. Could we see a Sam Ehlinger sort of get some snaps with a healthy Carson Wentz. And I'm not talking about Carson Wentz getting injured or anything or getting benched or anything. I mean, just like a, as a Taysom Hill type. Could we see that happening?
I mean, we saw Carson Wentz play last year, so yeah. I mean, I could see that. So, I mean, unfortunately, Carson Wentz is going to have, I think, a pretty short leash. I know Frank Reich likes him, and that's the reason why they went and got him. But
well, here, I don't even mean like as a starter. I just mean like, could we see him just get some snaps as like just in general, even with a healthy Wentz? Like if Wentz is playing great, could we still see some snaps from Ehlinger?
Maybe if they want to do some different things, I don't see as a pure quarterback sort of thing, but maybe like he can work in some Taysom Hill sort of situations. But, we'll see what happens. I know Reich is going to be creative with it, I think, too.
And don't forget, I mean, last year, Brissett had some of that happening where he got some snaps that way with Phillip Rivers, and a lot of it because Phillip Rivers doesn't want to move. But, I think that's something to look out for, I think. Let's go on to their division rival, the Tennessee Titans. The Titans said, hey, our first rounder didn't work out last year, so we're going to just get even more risky with it. Their first two picks, I think, are big sort of, big swings at the fences here. Caleb Farley and Dylan Raduns are both guys who have question marks for different reasons. Farley has question marks because of his injury history. Raduns because just his competition. I am also a big fan of Elijah Molden. Yes, there's some risk here. I don't care. I love this draft. They have a chance to knock two picks out of the park here. And if one of those hits, well, then guess what? You just got a star player. So I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that one. I mean, I like it. I don't love it just because, there is still a little bit of unknown with this, but any Washington cornerback I'm pretty much just in on because they just produce good cornerbacks, it seems like, all the time now. Raduns, like you said, ultimate boomer bust because we don't know that much about him. It's going to be interesting to see how he does at the NFL. Caleb Farley kind of has to get a little healthy. And, I think you had him at number one cornerback, right? And you weren't the only one that said, skill set, he's the best corner. He just needs to be healthy, and we haven't seen him be healthy. So that's going to be the tough thing. I like Monty Rice, even though he looks a little small to me on tape, but I think overall he's going to be pretty good. I like Molden. I really like Rashad Weaver in round 4 as I mentioned in the top defensive players. As far as a defensive end, run-stopping defensive end, I think he can be one of the better ones in this draft. So I think that's a pretty good pick there in round 4 in filling a role and filling a need for this team. So I think that they got better, and there's a chance that they got better if those two guys work out big time like they can.
Yeah, and I had Molden in my top 10 secondary players as well as a safety. So there's a lot I like about this football team. And yeah, with the Farley thing, one thing that's interesting that I didn't realize until recently is that I guess because people say 2 back surgeries, but it was 1 injury. So he had an injury. There was like 2, I don't know, discs that were broken or whatever. I don't know the technical term. And they only got surgery on 1 to begin with. But then like he was doing something else and it re-aggravated the other one. So then they got the surgery on the second thing. So it was the same injury that caused just multiple different back surgeries, which makes you feel a little bit better. That's not a chronic thing, but obviously still back injuries are scary. But I just think that there's too much talent to let him go, I think.
Yeah, and it's their biggest need too. So you might as well take a flyer and hope it works out. I don't think we thought Farley would be there that low. We were I think I was looking at like a Greg Newsome type at this spot. But getting a guy like Farley, I think, works out. I think that they got better with him and Molden in their secondary, which was just horrendous last year. That was a bad secondary, and I think it's a little bit better today.
Mm-hmm. And I had Raduns higher than Leatherwood, who they get in the second. Like, I mean, so a lot to like there for the Tennessee Titans. You want to move on to the Minnesota Vikings?
Yeah, so is this going to be your favorite draft?
Probably. It's up there. I'm not sure if I've done a specific favorite, but I'm a huge fan of it. I mean, obviously, there's, Christian Darrisaw was my number 2 tackle. Kellen Mond is my number 3 quarterback. I'm very interested in seeing what happens there. And then they got a lot of guys who are kind of, I feel like a lot of these players that, the couple defensive ends are and safety, these seem like kind of raw players that Mike Zimmer is just saying, you know what? I'm a good defensive coach. I'll try and fix some issues with you. And, we traded back. We have several of these picks. All I got to do is hit on a couple now. And it's similar to what you see Bill Belichick do. So there's a lot to like. Also, Amir Smith-Marset in the 5th. That feels like a steal to me. I had him as a 3rd round talent, so I'm not like crazy over him, but there's a lot to like. He can actually win on the outside. And, again, I'm a huge fan of Kellen Mond, so absolutely, I think they knocked this out in the park.
Yeah, I think that, the way they handled the whole Darisaw situation and being able to move back and still get him, that's just masterclass in drafting to be able to handle that and acquire more picks and also get the guy you want at 14. I thought that was a great move. The thing is with them is I feel like there's a chance all of their first 4 guys drafted, I could see playing on this team for a long time. I could see Darisaw being a stud for the next decade at tackle. I can see Wyatt Davis being a really good guard for the next decade. Chaz Surratt is a little small and, obviously coming over from quarterback, but the guy just tackles. He just tackles really well, and he is a guy who I think can play for a long time. He was a guy I really liked in the linebacker rankings and said I think he's a little underrated. So I think that their first 4 guys I could see playing on this team for a very long time, especially if Mon works out, which, we kind of went back and forth on it. We'll see. But like I said, you probably have a 2, 3, and 9 shot of these quarterbacks working out. It's kind of like throwing darts sometimes, but he has the skill set and all the qualities to look for in a quarterback. Is he going to put it together and show the consistency that he needs?
Yeah, let's talk about Kellen Mond for a second. Let's zero in on that because I think that's probably the most fascinating thing about this. What is the reason for drafting Kellen Mond, do you think? Do you think that they're legitimately saying, hey, this guy is good, people are sleeping on him, let's just draft him and have a good backup quarterback? Are they thinking maybe he could take over for Kirk Cousins? Are they looking to move on from Kirk Cousins? Well, if you have to say one of those 3, where he's strictly a backup, he potentially could be a starter depending on how it goes, or you think that this is a sign that they're moving on from Cousins, what would you say?
It's hard. Look, so I'll put it this way. If I were running an NFL team that had Kirk Cousins as the starting quarterback, I would not be married to the idea of Kirk Cousins starting for every year for the next 5 years. I don't, I think he's fine. And I think he can do some things that are pretty good. And I think, with that receiving core, he can put up some decent numbers on games. But, at the end of the day, it's Kirk Cousins. It's not like you're talking about replacing like a high-end quarterback. This is a guy who's going to be fine for his whole career. And I could see him being fine for a few more years in Minnesota. But I think it's an upside play. You look at they need a backup quarterback anyways, so you might as well take one at a rookie contract in the 3rd round. That makes a lot of sense. B, he's a guy with, whether you think he was the 6th best quarterback or even higher potentially in your quarterback rankings of this draft, he's a guy who has the entire skill set. He has arm strength. He has accuracy on some of his throws. He has good ball placement on some of his throws. He has, great touch. He's played in a really difficult division and put up some good numbers. And he had a great senior season playing a lot of snaps at Texas A&M. So I think it's an upside play. You're looking at this guy. He had a lot of reps in a really difficult division against good teams. And there's a good chance that he can be good and he can develop into a good quarterback. So we'll see what happens. Let's bring him into our building and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, and listen, Kirk Cousins is not a bad quarterback. I don't think anyone thinks Kirk Cousins is a bad quarterback. I think there's maybe some thought of, is he worth the contract? But again, we've seen how it goes with like a Chicago. Sometimes you just got to get a good quarterback. But to me, this feels a bit too like when you want to leave your job, the better thing to do is to not just leave your job, but to start applying for other jobs where you still work there. Maybe this could be what they're doing with Kellen Mond, just seeing if this works. And if Kellen Mond ends up looking good in practice, looking good in preseason, maybe you get him to play a game or 2 in the regular season, then maybe you can kind of say, hey, we can move on from Cousins there.
It feels kind of like the San Francisco 49ers setup, except they didn't trade multiple picks for it. That, you're okay with Jimmy playing this next season, but going forward, why wouldn't you see if one of these guys is better? There's no reason to take a quarterback and say, unless you have Aaron Rodgers and want to build everything around Aaron Rodgers like a lot of teams should.
Right.
Unless you have an Aaron Rodgers, you just say, hey, let's just make sure that we have a guy, why don't we just see if this guy's better? There's no harm in doing that.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. All right. Want to move off the Vikings now?
Yeah, we can go on.
Okay. Let's go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I have a feeling you have some things to say. So you go ahead and give your thoughts on the Steelers draft.
So we've talked about kind of the running back idea and, should running backs be taken in the first round? And as Jackson has said a couple times, I think that a running back's is fine being taken in the first round as long as you're kind of close to contention. When I don't love taking a running back in the first round is when you don't have an offensive line to block for him. I don't think James Conner is a stiff, and he looked terrible last year with the Pittsburgh Steelers because he didn't really have a great offensive line in front of him. So if they had a better team and were like close to Super Bowl contention, I'd be like, sure, I like Najee Harris with this team. But I thought they needed offensive line a lot more than drafting that running back first when there was good running backs later in this draft. Like a guy, the Jets waited and took a guy like Michael Carter, who I thought could be a pretty good running back as well, in round 4. So I thought they should have addressed the offensive line and other positions first. But overall, I have it as a meh because I like some of these other picks. I like Freiermuth a lot. I talked about that extensively in our pass catcher rankings because I think he's a good blocking tight end who can develop his receiving game. And I just love I like some of these other picks, even though I don't love the Harris pick.
Yeah, interesting. So, there's some interesting stuff here with the Steelers. So I guess I'm not quite as down on the Najee Harris. Let's start with Najee Harris. To me, like you said, I've said, if you're ready to compete, a running back can actually be a good move. It's just the issue is that they only are good for a couple of years. Well, they want to go all in on Big Ben, and it's a lot easier to get a good running back than it is to get 3 good offensive linemen. And I think that's kind of the issue. Is like one of the real problems they had was how many 3rd and 1, 4th and 1s were they just not able to get that yard. Like, it seemed like 1,000. I don't think I've ever seen a team struggle so much to convert those plays. Well, now with a good running back, you can do it. And you also get a guy like Pat Freiermuth, who people are saying, like, well, they need to address the offensive line. Well, tight ends can block too. I mean, tight ends can help you out that way. And they did get a couple of offensive linemen with the 3rd and 4th round pick, who I think could potentially be starters. I actually wouldn't be shocked if all 4 of these guys are starters. So again, it's not what I would have done. I'm just sort of explaining the logic behind it. And I don't think it's as bad as some people are making it out to be. So I'm going to go with a meh.
I had it as a meh too, just because I like some of the later picks I thought made up for it. But yeah, I mean, I didn't love in a vacuum the first pick, and I understand why they did it because it was a huge problem for them last year not being able to run the ball. But while I don't think James Conner's great, where I think Harris could be great, I also think a lot of it was the offensive line failing them in the running blocking game more so than Conner stinking. And I think having that offensive line in place before you get the running backs a little more important. So it'll be interesting to see going forward how that works out. I like some of these later picks. And, I made fun of the kicker in the 5th round. I don't mind drafting a punter in the 7th round because, a punter on your roster is probably going to add a little more value than any other 7th round pick. And I think Presley Harvin's actually a really good punter and a really good weapon that he was at Georgia Tech. Could really help this team, honestly, right away and be really effective.
Yeah, I'm pretty much always going to be in favor of drafting a punter in the 7th round, but if you like them, because it's different than kickers. Kickers, it's so mental that you never really know what's going to translate. A punter, it's like oftentimes guys spend their 7th round pick on a good special teams guy anyway, so might as well get the most important special teams guy outside of kicker. So yeah, I'm with you there. And again, I think pretty much everyone agrees though. Like Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, really good players, even if you don't like the situation. So this is the draft where probably 3 years from now, they still have 2 good starters on their team.
Yeah, it'll just be interesting to see how it works out this first year. I'm interested to see how Harris looks behind this offensive line because if he's not playing very well his first year, I think a lot of it is going to be more the offensive line's problem rather than Harris being a bust. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move on to Cleveland. Cleveland had a good draft. Cleveland hosted a draft, and they got some good players as well. Greg Newsome, Jeremy Owusu-Koramoah, who I think everyone was shocked fell as far as he did, except for the guys drafting. Anthony Schwartz, I'm also interested in getting that speedy wide receiver to pair with Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry. That's fun. So I'll say I love it.
Yeah, I think I love it too. I think there's some guys here that I think can play. So, like you said, I think Newsome is, he was really good at Northwestern, had a really good year, and I think he can be interesting. There's some of the intangibles that some of the athletic ideas are parts that you wish he was a little better at, but he has good ball skills, he has good coverage skills, it seems like. So I think it's a good pick. And then, yeah, JOK is the interesting one because he fell a lot. And I think, I'm not going to speculate everything, but I think the size at linebacker is obviously the concern because, we talked about Isaiah Simmons last year kind of being that tweener. He is smaller than Isaiah Simmons, and he seems like more of a pure linebacker. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. And I understand – I think I understand why he fell. I just didn't expect it to 52. 52 was a little surprising to me. So I think that's good value there. And just taking a guy who's a crazy athlete and, like we were saying through the draft process, might have the best highlights of anyone in this draft. So it'll be interesting to see if he can, kind of harness that upside. And then I just feel like there's guys across the board here that are going to be able to play for a long time. I think Richard LeCounte's a guy who could be a really good safety for a number of years. So it'll be interesting to see how this happens going forward. But I think this is a really good draft.
Yep, I totally agree. And again, the JOK, I think part of it is like they're just a little concerned of, teams are concerned of like how many of these things are going to translate to the NFL. But guess what? Some of them probably will. So that's why it's definitely worth a second round pick. Let's move on now to their division rivals. A lot of division rivals picked back to back this draft. The Baltimore Ravens. Ravens had a interesting draft. They got a receiver. Let's hope it works out better than some of the other receivers they've gotten. They got two receivers technically, but one first-round receiver. Also Jason Oweh, who's interesting. I'm not sure. I didn't have a first-round grade on him, but I like the fit. Bateman, I love the fit because again, it's going to be a lot of zone coverage where you kind of want a taller receiver who can go up and make a play. Ben Cleveland could fit that team well, fit that offense well. So I'm going to give it I'll give it a like it.
So, real quickly, did Jason Oweh switch his name before, like in the middle of the draft?
Oh yeah, he did. I forget what. I forget. I should have changed that. You're right.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. I saw that, but I didn't understand why. I didn't see the explanation for it. But anyways, I had him for the Ravens in our mock draft, and I felt like he just felt like a Raven. Great speed, some underrated strength, and you know what with the defensive lineman on that team, I think he's going to have an opportunity in some one-on-one coverages. I think the sack concerns are kind of BS. I think he's really good. I like Bateman. You have some concerns with the big lumbering receiver. How's he going to be able to get open? I think he's a little underrated in his separation abilities. And you know what? I think the Ravens needed a big lumbering receiver kind of. So I think that pick works out for them too. Like you said, I like Ben Cleveland. I think Tylan Wallace is another guy who at 131 is another good flyer to help this pass catching game because one of the things we talked about, wide receivers don't really want to go there in free agency because, it's tough to put numbers up. So you got to draft wide receivers and hope one of them works out. So it'll be interesting. And I guess the one thing that will be interesting too is Shaun Wade that was taken in round 5. Everyone was talking about him as a first-round pick before he opted back in, and I had plenty of opportunities that I enjoyed making fun of Shaun Wade being terrible last year at Ohio State. But here's the thing. He looked terrible as an outside corner last year, but when he was a slot corner 2 years ago, he was awesome, and everyone thought he was a first-round pick. Now, he benefited from playing next to Jeff Okudah and Damon Arnett, who were 2 first-round picks last year, and being that slot corner, but he's also going to have some really good corners in Baltimore to work with as a slot corner. That could be a really good upside pick in round 5 because, if he's able to, sit in that slot role, I thought this was a really good pick, and that could make it one of the best picks in the draft if he ends up, looking like he did 2 years ago.
Yeah, and Baltimore knows how to grade corners as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, I made plenty of fun of him, at that outside corner position for Ohio State, but I think he does have some upside still as a slot guy. So, I really like a lot of these picks for them.
Yeah, and fresh pinch Josh, Odafe Oweh, that's his I guess he used to go by Jason because it's easier to pronounce, but now he decides that he doesn't care. Weird timing, though, right after you're drafted to do that.
Yeah, well, all right, Odafe.
Yeah. So again, I'm a big fan of Bateman. I had him pretty high. I think it was my number 7 receiver, 6 or 7 receivers. So he's up there. I'm a big fan of Bateman. So I like this pick. Want to move on to the New Orleans Saints now. I asked that as a question, but then I just went ahead and said, I don't care what you think. I'm going to go to the Saints anyways. Peyton Turner, the first round, Pete Warner, Paulson Debo, Ian Book. This is the draft. I don't think anyone that was a Saints fan doing a 7-round mock draft had for them.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I thought Adebo was a little underrated, but I don't know. I didn't love a lot of these picks. I guess I'll put it as dislike. I don't know if I'm ready to go hate it just because I trust this team in their front office and, just what they've done over the last few years. So I don't hate it, but like where I thought Peyton Turner was another guy with a really interesting skill set with his athleticism and just everything he charted out as at Houston, I also didn't think he was a first-round pick. And I also didn't think that replacing Trey Hendrickson was their number one need when they still had Davenport, Cameron Jordan, and all those guys. So while I understand the logic behind it, I didn't think it was their top need and I didn't think they got the best value out of it. So I have it overall as a dislike just because I didn't love some of the value picks. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think I'll go. I mean, so my issue is they went so far off the board on some of these picks that I just don't even know. Like with Peyton Turner, I never really evaluated him. For whatever reason, he was just one of those guys that slipped through the cracks. So I don't know that much about him, to be honest. I part of me wants to be like, I trust the Saints. They do a pretty good job at drafting and getting these guys, but at the same time, they did spend 2 first-round picks on Marcus Davenport, so it's not like they don't miss. They have Adebo, who is interesting to me. You guys know I'm not a big fan of slower corners. I believe he ran like a mid 4.4s at his pro day, which is probably a mid 4.5. But at the same time, they like to play 2 safeties, so maybe not as much of an issue. I don't know. It's weird. I guess I'll go dislike, but I got to do a film study on Peyton Turner and really understand who he is. And maybe if I know like Brett Coleman, for example, loves Turner, so he's just a guy that happened to slip through the cracks, and I need to focus on a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like I like Turner, but I also didn't think he was the number 28 pick in this draft. I like Werner, and I think that's a good pick. I like Adebo, but at the same time, like if they had taken a guy like your guy Eric Stokes at 28. I think Turner's there probably in the second round too, that they can get a guy like him and still have it work out. And, I think they needed a corner, and taking a guy like Adebo helps. But I thought there was guys in round 1 that they could have taken rather than taking a guy who was kind of a project, I felt like, at the edge.
Yeah, or even like a Joe Tryon. I think it just maybe could be better. But again, I haven't watched the tape, so I just don't know. Want to just move on to the Packers?
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay, so Green Bay, they get my guy, Eric Stokes, who, again, oh my God, the Packers not drafting a receiver. Like, okay, calm down. The real thing is that the real issue with the Jordan Love pick wasn't that they didn't get a receiver. It was that they literally didn't even help their team at all because they got a backup quarterback and then a third-string running back. The receiver was just an option. And they did get Amari Rodgers, who I thought was a bit of a reach, to be honest, but they got a receiver. And Eric Stokes is really good. Like, I think that I don't get why everyone's hating on him. The guy's he has the number 1 trait you need in a corner, which is speed. Josh Myers, I don't know a ton about, but again, they could use a replacement, and I trust Green Bay. I think that there's a lot you can criticize Green Bay for, but I think people are kind of using this draft to criticize sort of more, but maybe that's just me. I don't know.
I think the idea of what happened around the Packers makes this seem a lot worse than what it was, because everything that was going on with the Packers this entire weekend with the whole Aaron Rodgers bombshell kind of, put a sour note to the entire weekend for the Packers. I actually like this draft. I like Stokes too. I think he can be good. And he's another guy where it's like, same thing with receiver. I felt like there was like 6 or 7 corners where if this guy's the number 1 corner in 5 years, I'm not shocked. And he's one of those guys too. So I think that makes sense. I don't think Amari Rodgers is too much of a reach. Like you said, I think he can be good. We'll see how that, pans out. And then the offensive lineman, I know people are saying they should have taken Creed Humphrey for center, but this is one of those things where I kind of just trust the Packers when it comes to offensive linemen. If they want to pick a guy that they like more, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt more than other teams because they always produce offensive linemen. So I'm okay with the pick there. We'll see how it pans out, but this team just evaluates offensive linemen really well. And as a 6th-round pick too, I really like Cole Van Landen too. He's just this huge guy. He was a monster prospect too, and Wisconsin breeds offensive linemen. So I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt with it.
Yeah, it's I've never seen so much criticism over like you drafted this 2nd-round center instead of that 2nd-round center. It's like, what are we doing here? Like this a late 2nd-round pick, get your guy. I don't know. I think it's a little bit silly. And like you said, I trust them when it comes to offensive linemen. Maybe not when it comes to making your quarterback feel good. But also, I also okay. I'm just gonna hot take. Aaron Rodgers isn't going anywhere. He's staying in Green Bay for this year, at least for one more year. I can't see him leaving.
I mean, so I guess we'll talk about this briefly because we're on an hour and a half now.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's gonna stay, and I think overall that like I'll believe the whole "I'm not playing in Green Bay ever again" when it comes from Aaron Rodgers' mouth. I'm not gonna believe it when it's sources say Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to pay for the Packers ever again. So I'll believe it when I actually hear him say it. So as far as I'm concerned, I think he's gonna play this next year, and I think the idea that these teams, as soon as a quarterback says he wants out, should just be like, okay, we'll take 3 first-round picks from a team, please. Just wait and see what happens. Talk to the guy and see what happens. I'm not ready to jump the gun and say he's gone.
Yeah, and what happens to Green Bay if they decide to keep him? So either he retires and gives up $22 million so he can go host Jeopardy, which, by the way, we don't know that he's going to be the host of Jeopardy. He did it for a week, and everyone's convinced that that's just his job, and they're like, Jeopardy is begging for Aaron Rodgers to agree to it when he was fine. Like, it wasn't like he was like amazing at hosting Jeopardy, and he's not going to give up the money, and Green Bay isn't going to just let him trade him away unless they get a huge value back. It's silly, especially now that are they really going to get future draft picks now because the draft is over? I think he's not going anywhere. But you want to give any final thoughts on that?
No, I think we covered it. We'll obviously have plenty of offseason to talk about, Aaron Rodgers' next team or whatever happens here going forward. But yeah, I mean, I'll believe anything when I actually see it happen.
Yeah. All right. So Buffalo Bills, we have 2 teams left that had first-round picks. Then we have a couple that didn't. The Bills, this is an interesting one for me. So I'm not crazy about Rousseau, but I do also understand the logic behind. They kind of got a lot of these guys that are sort of just these, potential guys you hope for the best. Rousseau, though, it's just he's very raw. I don't know a lot about him, and it seems like there could have, again, like a Joe Tryon would have been, I think, a lot better here than a Rousseau, and there's even a couple other guys they could have gone with. I don't know if I can give it a hate it, but I'm just because they were in a tough spot. You're picking 30th already, so but I'm going to give it a dislike.
Dislike. I had meh. Here's the thing. I feel like they looked at this team and said, what happened between us and Kansas City? They couldn't get anything towards Mahomes. They couldn't get any pass rush at all. So let's add 2 guys we really like. I actually like Carlos Basham as a 2nd-round pick. I think that's a good pick. He's a guy who got better every year at Wake Forest. And, Rousseau is the ultimate. I feel like he's a boomer bust kind of guy. I think he's huge. He has every physical trait you want. And I think he can get better. We just want to see it a little more consistently. So I think that they added a couple defensive ends and say, hey, if we're going to compete with Kansas City, we got to be able to get after Mahomes and make him a little uncomfortable, which is something they didn't do because I don't think they're that far off besides that from competing with Kansas City. So they addressed their biggest need and did it, with their first 2 picks, which I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I'm just not a big fan of Rousseau. That's the only reason why I'm not. And I do still acknowledge he's just a complete wild card for me, and that's not what I would want to spend a 1st-round pick on. But again, it's tough. You're drafting late, so maybe Matt is more fair. I might say Matt then, but I'm not wild about it either.
Yeah. So I think overall, I think that they're helping themselves, and they're, I thought it was a good job of looking at their needs and addressing them, which is kind of what you have to do when you're picking 30. Now, like you said, there's other edge rushers I thought out there that they could have looked at, but at the same time, like, it's another one where it's like, if 5 years from now, Greg Rousseau's the best edge rusher here, I'm not entirely shocked. He's huge. He just has everything you look for in an edge rusher. So I'm not entirely shocked if he's the best out of this, but I also think he has the longest way to go.
Yeah, I'm also not surprised. Wouldn't be shocked if he's out of the league in 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think Basham's going to stay. So I think he's at least solid. So you give yourself a foundation, and then Rousseau is kind of betting on house money there.
Yeah, that's well said. Let's go to Tampa Bay now. So there was good and bad with this. Yeah. So let's see if I can find the. Here we go. Joe Tryon, I like. I've already brought him up a couple times in this. I'm a big fan of Joe Tryon. Jalen Dardine, the 4th round, getting a a good special. They're kind of in the luxury spot where they can go after special teams in the fourth round, kind of their fourth round and both their seventh rounders. Those were all just special teams guys. And KJ Britt, I think, will play special teams as well. They're getting a backup offensive lineman. That was all their picks, right? The good job by the Buccaneers. Everything was good.
Huh. So how mad were you that they didn't take Mon and then he goes 4 picks later?
Oh, it was infuriating. It was devastating, I think. I thought it was happening. I was so ready. And then Kyle Trask, the guy who I completely bashed, didn't even put in my top 10 quarterback list, ends up getting taken instead.
Yeah, I ended up having this as a slight dislike. I almost had mad, but I ended up going dislike. I think I like Trayon, so I'm not going to hate the pick too much. I think he can be very good. I just had him more of a second round grade, and it was a need, and it's interesting to see a team that brings back 22 starters, how they evaluate the draft, because I feel like there was some of just like, let's get some depth here at this position. We'll get some depth here, and then, we got a quarterback that we can take a flyer on. I thought this would have been the perfect opportunity for Davis Mills. Davis Mills was my number 6 quarterback after that big 5. But a thing I said about Davis Mills when it came to the quarterback rankings was that he had probably the worst college experience of anybody in this draft. He was thrown into there because KJ Costello got hurt. His tackle, who was supposed to be basically his anchor for his entire time there, Walker Little, barely played. He had COVID and an injury himself. Stanford's talent really dropped basically as soon as he got there when he was I think he was the number 1 rated pocket passer in his draft class. He was a Georgia product that was in there with Fields and Lawrence, and he was the number 1 rated pocket passer, goes to the Stanford team where the talent drops off as soon as he gets in. He's forced into the starting lineup. His left tackle immediately basically goes out. So I thought that basically it was a small sample size with 11 games, but I thought he has every throw in the book. He has everything that he wants. And I thought working with a guy like Tom Brady in Tampa Bay probably would have been the best situation for him. And I just like him a lot more than Trask as a skill set because I don't love Kyle Trask, and I don't love his lack of arm strength. He looks like a Chad Pennington type without Chad Pennington's 65% completion percentage is something I said earlier. So I don't know. I would have gone with a guy like Mills over Trask, in my opinion. And, I know you love the upside of Mon too. I do feel like there's better quarterbacks there.
I mean, Mills and Trask, I'm kind of like whatever on. I think maybe you could argue so here's my main issue with Kyle Trask is I'm going to try to explain this on the podcast the best I can. So the kind of throw motion that you typically like in the NFL, the one that typically works in the NFL, is a very quick one. You think about the shoulders sort of being, you talk about it. Think about it's very similar to a boxer, right? How you throw a punch. Your shoulders are kind of part of one. They go together, and you want a quick motion where your arm doesn't go back too far. Your arm kind of stays where it's at and then goes forward. That's the ideal throwing motion. Trask puts his arm very far back before throwing. And some people might say, well, why does that matter so much? Who cares if he puts his arm, if the throw is accurate, then it's all the same. But the issue is that when there's a little bit of pressure, now he has to hurry up the arm throw, or just because he wants to throw it quicker, he has to hurry the motion up a little. That takes a lot of strength off of it and takes a lot of accuracy off of it, which is why you see a lot of inconsistency with Trask, especially with these quick intermediate throws. Yes, he does have an accurate arm, and I think that there are times when you see him actually look pretty good with his arm strength, but everything has to be working perfectly. And I think the only real way I can see Trask becoming a good quarterback is if you can completely change how he throws the football, which I mean, that's just such a difficult task to do for Trask. That rhymed. And I mean, if anyone can do it, it's going to be the quarterback whisperer with Tom Brady there to help him. I get it. I don't hate the idea of going quarterback here. If Mond was gone, I wouldn't mind this pick, but I just don't see how you evaluate this and say, oh yeah, clearly, Kellen Mond, not quite as good as Kyle Trask. I just don't see how you do that. And maybe I don't know. Maybe they see something I don't. But and one last thing while I'm rambling is there's somehow been this thing of oh, Jason Light's a genius. He just won a Super Bowl. It's like, whoa. I'm allowed to criticize Jason Light. Okay, don't take that away from me, for one thing. Yes, the Super Bowl was great. This is still the guy who drafted Roberto Aguayo in round 2. Okay, Jason Light is the definition of a 1 step backwards, 2 steps forward general manager. He'll get the job done, but he's not going to be perfect when doing it. So you're allowed to criticize certain things as well. But again, I like the rest of the draft. Joe Tryon, really good. I think they got better. I think this is still probably the favorites to win the Super Bowl. I would have liked Kellen Mond. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, so like you said, I just thought there was better quarterbacks out there, whether it was Mond or Mills, and I thought this was a great opportunity for Mills. So that's the only pick I really have a lot of like harsh criticisms for. But like I said, this is a team that's bringing back 22 starters. They had a chance to get some depth with Treon, with Hainsey, and I don't remember a lot of KJ Britt, but I remember when I was watching Auburn games, I didn't think he was bad. I thought he was pretty good. So that's a nice pick in round 5 too. So I thought there was solid picks here, but I thought there was more upside picks that they could have went with. They decided just to get depth and help them out going forward.
Yeah, and they legitimately spent like half the draft on special teams too, which was their biggest position of need. So I guess I get it. Like they're trying to win a Super Bowl. Why not? But yeah, it was kind of a tough draft though. It was hard to really like what could you have done? It's kind of tough.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see going forward. But yeah, so I thought it was an interesting draft, but I ended up going slight dislike just because I thought the quarterback pick was actually kind of their biggest pick going forward, and I didn't love the pick. So
yeah, I hear you. I'll probably go maybe even a like because I like Tryon, but regardless, let's go to now some of these teams that did not have first round picks. We'll go to the Seattle Seahawks. They had look ready for this laundry list of draft picks they had. Here we go. These are the picks. It covers our whole faces because of the thing is gay. Only 3 picks, and interesting. So Dwayne Eskridge, who I like, it's not what I would have done in round 2. And then, like a Trey Brownstone, Forsythe. So the Seahawks are basically almost the exact same team as they were last year.
Yeah, I ended up just having it as a man because I didn't really know how to evaluate this. There's such a small sample size with a lot of this. So, I mean, yeah, I just kind of had it as a mad just because there wasn't too much to talk about it that felt like. The one pick I thought was pretty interesting wasn't a pick at all. It was an undrafted free agent, which, you could say, oh, it's undrafted free agent. Who cares? There's still some good players that come out of that. I liked Tamorion Terry. I thought he had a nice skill set at Florida State. I thought he had some things that I could see that working out in the NFL. I don't know if he's going to be a star, but I think he can be a solid wide receiver, and they got him as an undrafted guy. I thought that was a pretty nice upside pick.
Yeah, interesting. I honestly have not done my deep dive on that, but that's good stuff by you. And yeah, I mean, I don't hate Eskridge as kind of like that. The one weird thing is I guess they basically just want him to be like the slot receiver. I think they maybe could have gone better receivers still on the board, but they wanted a third receiver. So a third receiver is important. Like that doesn't matter. I know there was more important needs, but that doesn't matter. So, I don't hate it. Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I just haven't met, there's not really much you can do with 3 picks. So it's, they're just going to have to hope a lot of these picks, a lot of these players, kind of work out from last year. It's the same team, like you said.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to the Rams now. This was another interesting one, to say the least. Interesting. So this is their list. The big one, Tutu Atwell in the second round. Kind of a bit of a surprise, getting this sort of, very small, almost gadgety type player, deep threat type guy. I think they wanted a deep threat in this offense because they also went out and signed Deshaun Jackson. So again, when you're a better team, you kind of have the chance. You kind of go a little bit more luxury picks. So I'm not crazy about it. I'm probably still going to go dislike, but I understand it.
Yeah. I mean, I really didn't like Tutu Atwell. He felt too Tavon Austin-y to me. And the thing is like, he was picked before Terrace Marshall, right? Like, yeah, I mean, that's the only thing I thought was crazy. I know they wanted more speed, but I thought Marshall had enough speed to make it work. And it's just a better wide receiver. So if your wide receiver is something you wanted, I didn't understand not taking Terrace Marshall there. There's some guys that I think can be interesting. Robert Rochelle's a guy I think is interesting. Bobby Brown's a guy who I think is interesting. But nothing I really love, which is why I kind of have it as a dislike.
Yeah, and again, people. I think a lot of people have talked. Even some people in the chat are saying like, "Well, what's the fit? The fit doesn't make any sense." I think Sean McVay he wants something. He wants that deep threat. I think that's really what it comes down to. Is I don't know what it is. I don't know why you don't get Anthony Schwartz instead. Maybe you could even gotten him around later, which would have made sense. But that's what they're going to go with. I don't know. But again, it's kind of one of those. Hey, the Rams tend to know what they're doing, so maybe I'll just give it to them. But yeah, I'm not crazy about it. It's not what I would have done.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I dislike this draft.
Yeah. All right. Whatever. Let's move on to Kansas City now. Kansas City Chiefs. So they did not have a first round pick, but I thought they kind of made the most of a lot of this other stuff. They get Creed Humphrey. So apparently everyone universally agrees upon is the future GOAT at center. Nick Bolton, who I like. I think they needed a linebacker. I think we kind of talked about him as sort of this, maybe a low ceiling, but also a high floor type guy. So I like Nick Bolton. I think that's a good selection as well. So I think it's a good draft by them.
Yeah, I hate that this happens. It just kind of works out for them all the time, doesn't it? It's just like, look, I like Bolton, and while I think people are going crazy about the Packers, because like I said, I give the Packers the benefit of the doubt when it comes to offensive linemen. I also think Creed Humphrey is going to be pretty good. He kind of has that Jason Kelce sort of athletic center to him. So I think that's a good pick, and it solidifies their offensive line now with those four guys going across with the two guards and Orlando Brown as well. And I think that's where you kind of get it into the love it territory, is they basically use their first round pick on Orlando Brown Jr., who I think is better than any tackle they could have got there. So I thought all of that was really good. I thought they got some really interesting players. So I give it as I like it.
Yeah, the stupid Chiefs. We're trying to repeat here. The Chiefs have to go and do this.
Yeah, so I'm going to put you on the spot again. If you had to do power rank, is this number one team right now?
It's so tough, man. I mean, I think what I'm gonna stick with blind confidence in my team and say Tampa Bay. But like, if you said Kansas City, like it's hard to argue that. I guess what I still come down to is the Chiefs could use a pass rush. There's the Frank Clark and Chris Jones kind of question marks of how good are they, because they obviously have had high heights, but last year wasn't the best year for either of them. Specifically, Frank Clark more so than Chris Jones, and there are some issues. Again, the linebacker, it's still rookies. There's still some issues. I think the Chiefs' offensive line is going to be great, and obviously both offenses will be good. But I think the Bucs have the pass rush that Kansas City doesn't have. So I'll still say Tampa Bay. But if you argue Kansas City, I'd have a hard time saying the contrary.
Yeah, and it was two guys they invested in, so it's kind of like you kind of have to hope that they work out. I think the things that you look at is like this team needed a center. This team needed to get better on the offensive line. They had this offseason. And across the board, basically, they have four really good offensive linemen, I think. And then, I think we evaluated this as potentially one of the worst linebacking groups before the season. I think they played a little above their weight than what we expected. And Nick Bolton's going to be able to help that, too. I think this is going to be a, decent linebacking core next year with everybody they have and adding Bolton to that group. So I think this is a good team.
Yeah, hot take. Chiefs, good team.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. All right. And
speaking
also,
of not good teams.
Yes, exactly. Team that no one will conflate for being a good team, but they get Davis Mills, also trade up for Nico Collins for some reason, but they get Brevin Jordan as well. I mean, to me, this is a dislike. The only reason why it's not a hate is because I like Jordan, but I'm not a big fan of Davis Mills. I get why they had to do it, but I would have rather them trade up and get Colin Mond, but that's me. I get it. I'm weird. I don't know. Whatever. Like, we knew this wasn't going to be a great draft going in because they didn't have capital. Hard to do much with it, but I still feel like they kind of threw a pick away with Davis Mills.
Yeah, I actually hated this draft, and this might be my least favorite draft. I know they were kind of working with nothing because, they traded their first two picks.
Right.
So there's that issue, first of all. They didn't have first 2 round picks. I just said earlier, I like Davis Mills. Here's my issue. As I said with kind of Tampa Bay, I think Davis Mills is a 2-year project because he hasn't had a lot of experience. He had 11 games at Stanford dealing with a whole bunch of stuff. There's a chance he might have to play this year. And, we're not going to speculate. We're not going to go into all this stuff with Watson. But there's a chance he might have to play this year. And I don't think he's ready to play. And, while I like a lot of the skill set, I don't think he's near ready to play. I also don't like Nico Collins, who's a guy who he just screams N'Keal Harry to me. He can't get open. He's big, but he can't get open at all. So I don't like Nico Collins that much either. I like Jordan, but if I like one of the 5 picks, I hate that,
Right.
So I hated that. So I hated the picks. I thought that they could have, I thought Mond would have been a more interesting pick here because I think he has more of a skill set to kind of work right now, and also be in Houston would be interesting after playing at A&M. And I don't love Mills. I like Mills as a skill set and a project. I don't think he's ready to play, and I think that they have a long way to go, and this just feels like it's a longer way to go now.
Yeah, although the counterpoint is Tyrod Taylor being a starter, Mills could sort of, keep the trend going of him starting for then a quarterback takes his place and ends up being a franchise quarterback.
Well, the thing is he's probably going to have to play. Just giving, Tyrod Taylor probably has the saddest NFL career just because it always seems like the worst luck happens to him. Whether he's getting stabbed in the lung or whatever it was last year, and then Justin Herbert being really good. But like I said, I don't know if Davis Mills is ready to be good next year. I think he can be pretty good down the line, but I don't know if he's ready to be good in week 6 when he's probably going to have to play.
Yeah. Tyrod Taylor also got benched for Nathan Peterman. That did not work out too well for Peterman.
No, that's true. So, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Two out of three, not bad.
Yeah. So it's either Justin Herbert or Nathan Peterman. So
yeah,
where is Davis Mills going to land on that spectrum is the question.
Well, probably somewhere. I'm going to go out on a limb and say he'll land somewhere in between those two guys. Yeah. Well, how about this fun game? Not really a fun game. What am I saying? If we were to replace Brevin Jordan and say they drafted him in the 3rd round. They then get Davis Mills with their next pick, and they got Nico Collins in a 5th round. Would we then be feeling a little bit better about the draft? You know what I mean? Sort of like because
I guess I would move it up to dislike just because of the value of the picks. Because I do like Jordan. I do think Jordan's a good football player, and I think he is going to be good. But like I said, I don't love the fit first of all with Mills, and I mean I just don't think Nico Collins is going to be good. I'm willing to be proven wrong. But I just look at the skill set and say, this is a dying breed in the NFL. I don't see this working out.
Yeah. And it's not like they needed a receiver anyways. It's one of the few things they were actually okay on. So just an odd draft all around. And again, there was no way they were going to come out of this looking like, oh, wow, Texans killed that draft. Unless Fields fell to round 3 or something. It just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, no kidding. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, this is a surefire bet for the number 1 pick next year, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I could bet this now, honestly. I'm willing to bet right now the Texans as the number 1 pick and Trevor Lawrence as Offensive Rookie of the Year. Honestly. I feel like very confident in that. And we're still, 6 months away from the season?
What about Trey Lance?
I mean, there's no guarantee he's going to start.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah. What about Kellen Mond?
Is locking him in. I mean, here's the thing. I said this about Lawrence, so I'll say this quickly because we're almost 2 hours now. So Lawrence is going to have a situation where I think they have a really good offense. They have good receivers, good running backs, good offensive line. And because they didn't address the defense like I was hoping, they're going to be, having to put up 40 points a game. So I think that they're going to have a lot of opportunities to throw, and I think he's going to put up big numbers.
Yeah. Is it a concern now for Kellen Mond that the last guy I jokingly said was going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year was Isaiah Wilson, and that did not work out too well for Isaiah Wilson?
Yeah, you just cursed your guy there. You might as well just edit this out of the podcast now.
Oh, man. All of the Falcons, Panthers, and Saints picks look like they could win Offensive Rookie of the Year next year.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, all right, nailed it. You guys are welcome. Bucks fans, you're welcome. Okay, with that dumb joke, I think that's a great spot to end this. Kyle, we did almost 2 hours here. Marathon show. I did not expect it to go this long, but it was a fun one.
Yeah, I'm a little exhausted now. That took it out of me, but we made it through. That was a fun show, and draft is done. It's going to be interesting to see. Yeah, I have no idea what we're going to talk about next week, but we'll figure something out. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Kyle, before we go, for everyone who, first off, again, everyone who stayed with us for all 2 hours, thank you for the incredible. Yeah. But also, Kyle, let them know where they can find us on Twitter before we head out. Yeah, follow us at On The Sideline JK on Twitter. That's at On The Sideline JK on Twitter. Follow him at Jackson Kruger. Subscribe to his channel below. Follow me at by Kyle Gronin. That's GRONDIN by Kyle Gronin on Twitter. And yeah, tune in for next week. We're going to figure something out that we're going to talk about, and it won't take 2 hours. It'll probably just be an hour. So it'll be a fun show. Yes, good stuff. All right. Again, thank you to everyone. We appreciate it. Appreciate you guys sticking with us. And until next time, have a good one. Peace.